Welcome to the Silversides interview for 2017. I'm Bill Chesney, and with me today is Kristen Wallace, who is a graduate of the then drama program, now theater and performance program. So Kristen, why don't we'll just start with you, just tell us, give us those bio facts about your time here.
What I did here. So I started in 2002, I finished in 2006. I had a great theatrical run here. The plays that I did, well, I started with the Upstart, which was the first year of the Upstart Festival.
Right.
A final year student asked me to perform in his piece called He, which was the aftermath of Othello, if Ophelia had not died. And that was me on stage for 45 minutes in a coma, speaking coming out of a coma in a bed. So that was my first challenge. And yeah, there was so many different things that I did that were incredible. We did Mimetic Flesh,
right,
which was the first site-specific theater piece we did at Waterloo.
First time for the department, yeah?
That was really cool. We can go into that. And then the last year I did Vanities as my year-long thesis project.
Right.
That we produced, and we all sort of directed. We had guest directors come in, and then I did the wardrobe design, and obviously was one of the lead actresses.
Right,
in it.
you played Mary in Vanities, and we're going to come back to each of those productions to talk about a little more. But I think maybe the next thing to tell us is, so what have you been doing since graduating, in a nutshell?
Well, I first moved back home to Toronto, and I started taking a bunch of film classes, just on-camera classes, because I hadn't done that really. I just had my theater background, but I did a play called Trifles at U of T, part of the graduate program there, which was really cool. And then I actually quickly landed a year-long role on this really cool web series that was called Team Epic, and it was about a bunch of Canadian superheroes in a time where people were questioning if superheroes were really necessary anymore, and especially Canadian superheroes, because we were always overshadowed by the American superheroes. And I was the only female in the superhero troupe, and I was a Valkyrie, and I learned spear work, and I got to do all this sort of more martial art training. And so that was incredible. And then I was the lead of 2 different independent feature films that were both by the same director. And
in Toronto?
Those were in Toronto. Oh, I landed the roles in Toronto. It was Montreal director, producer, writer. So we went to Montreal, all kind of around Quebec and some smaller areas in Quebec, to shoot. First, it was called Lethal Accidents, and it was a dark comedy. I played a bored housewife who ended up killing my husband. And then the director and I got along so well, and he really liked my work in it, that funny enough, he was the one who encouraged me to go to LA, and then as soon as I moved to LA, he asked me to audition for his next film, which was based on a true story. It was called, it changed names, it ended up being Tree Line, the film, but it was based on a missing persons case that's still open to today. And I wasn't the missing person, it was my mother, and I played the daughter who had been estranged from her mom for so long, and had kind of developed these sort of OCD tendencies because of it. And so that was I ended up booking the film, came back to Quebec to shoot that again for 3 weeks. And that was incredibly challenging because it was a real story, but then also I had never played somebody with such mental hardships.
So a kind of an out there character, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of being exposed and so risky on some level for an actor.
Definitely,
then, right?
because I mean it took a lot of research too, where OCD comes from, and then just the different ways it can affect you. I mean everyone has it a little bit, but But I was lucky enough because I had just moved to LA. One of the main reasons why I wanted to go to LA was I had started reading this book by this amazing acting coach named Ivana Chubbuck, who's a world-renowned acting coach. Halle Berry thanked her in her Oscar speech, and so did Charlize Theron for Monster and Monsters Ball. And I realized you can actually still study with her. So I applied to to her theater. I guess it's sort of a conservatory, and I got in to the advanced class. You don't get into her class right away unless you're a famous actor. But I was lucky enough that once I moved, I was in the advanced class, which is one below hers, and you can go and audit all of her classes once you're in the studio. And since I just moved to LA, and then I just booked that second feature with the same Nicholas Cummings as the director of Treeline, and I said,
Nicholas Cummings?
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
That director? Because
Yeah.
that's the same name as the student director of your...
No, it's not.
No, Nicholas Cummings is your student director.
Nicholas, I'm sorry, Nicholas. I can't remember his last name.
Okay, but it's, well, so we can fix that.
So never mind, not Nicholas Cummings.
Yeah.
But yes, since I had just booked my second feature back to back, and I was very daunted by playing this OCD character that was very much my story, and I was in every scene. I went up to Ivana Chubbuck after my advanced class, and I said to her, your technique is really working for me. I just moved here, and I just booked my second lead in a feature film. And she said, that's incredible, congratulations. And she said, if you can do that, then you should be in my class. And she said, why don't you start next week and send me the script, and we'll work on 2 scenes before you go.
Amazing.
And so it was incredible, because most people, they have to work their way up. It takes a year or something to be in an advanced class before you get to her master class. And there's famous people in her class, and it's a 100-seat theater, and she expects you to have a full set. So you come, you do your scene, but if we're in a living room, what's in your living room? Where are your props?
And she expects all of that to be present
all of that.
as well.
And and because she's so famous, people come and watch her master classes all the time. So not only was my first class people thinking, who is this girl? I thought she just started in the advanced class. But then it was also, she's bringing in her own feature film that she's doing, where most of the time you're given a notable feature film to do a scene from. And it was very terrifying, but she really, really helped me before the feature film, and was really encouraging. And I mean, she pushed me very hard.
And did that experience then, do you feel in hindsight, because you have, so 2 things. You've always had, my recollection, you always had a capacity to put yourself right out there, Kristen, right? Like right out there, and just take on whatever it was. I thought the little role in He, where you're in a bed, displayed that for sure. The work that you did in My Medic Flesh, that willingness to take a risk, but to be very thoughtful about it, and to have it be informed by performance decisions that are responsible and that are grounded in something real, right? So you already had those qualities, is my point. And do you feel that Ivana sort of gave you something that then kind of gave you some kind of quantum leap, or?
I mean, I think she definitely tapped into that and pushed. I think she just pushed me even further. So she saw that I was willing to teeter on the edge, and she wanted me to fall off the edge. She wanted me, to kind of break that edge. And so she, also her technique is very, it's very introspective. So you kind of feel like you're going through therapy a little bit. So you do realize what is very unique and special about me, and what and so she really brings that out even more. So and she's a very challenging teacher. Like she will she interjects when you're in scenes, and she'll yell things at you. She makes it very personal. So I felt like I think I just got to a deeper level, and maybe got a little less fearful.
Yeah.
It's nice that you say that because obviously there's still fear in everything I do.
Well, fear is also a part of art making, right?
Yeah.
Like any kind of creation has fear attached to it. Any kind of creation has risk-taking attached to it.
Yeah.
There is no art if there's no risk, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that to be true. So I think that's really interesting. Sorry, so just to get back on the timeline thing, so now you've got this film, Moments of Clarity, that you wrote and that you produced, right? Or you're one of many producers.
Well,
right?
I was the main producer.
Maybe set this up instead of me saying it incorrectly.
So yeah, do you want me to start Moments of Clarity?
Well, I think just give us what the movie is, okay? Because we'll come back to it. There's other
How it
stuff I
all
want
began.
to, yeah. But really, just so briefly, what is the movie? Yeah.
So Moments of Clarity is a dark comedy. Yes, that I co-wrote with another Canadian actor, writer, Christian Lloyd, and I co-produced it with David Phillips. I got a producer to help me who had done producing before because I had not. So he had done about 8 films when I hired him. And yeah, it's about an unlikely friendship between these two girls and this sort of like wild road trip that they find themselves on that ends up changing their life and perspective of what they had of life.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's I say it's a dark comedy, and we toured the festival circuit for a year with it.
And you won how many awards at those festivals?
We won 9 awards.
9 awards at a bunch of festivals that included San Diego, right?
Yes, so
Boston.
we started at the Boston Film Festival where I won Best Actress and my director won Best Director, which was
Pretty
incredible. And yeah, we went to the Catalina Film Festival where we won Best Feature Award of Merit and the Audience Award. And then the San Diego Film Festival, we won the Audience Award. We won a couple independent Cine Awards that are big independent film festival awards. I got a Best Actress nomination there as well. And yeah, there was a couple others in there.
So there are so many things I'd like to ask you about relative to that. Moments of Clarity was not the first writing that you had done. Is that correct? Or what other? Can you trace a little bit? Because you would have written some material of your own for Mimetic Flesh,
Definitely.
I think, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, when thinking about it, if somebody asked me now or when I started Moments of Clarity, are you a writer? Do you write? I would say no. But thinking of my trajectory and how it all began at Waterloo, it really, we did a lot of sort of producing and writing and collaborative work of whatever piece we were working on.
Yeah.
But definitely Mimetic Flesh, we created those characters from scratch. Yeah. The site-specific work allowed us all to direct and produce ourselves. What were we doing with the space we were in? What's the purpose of everything? What's the flow of it? So yeah, it all began there, and then there was no concrete writing involved with then vanities or any of that. But I mean, I think it all when you are producing a piece. You put on a writer's hat a little bit anyway.
Well, you sort of have to. I mean,
Yeah.
I think one could say that any theater artist has to put on if not a writer's hat, then a dramaturg's hat anyway, to think about just be very cognizant of the overall structure and the overall intention of the work that's being created and what that individual's role, whether it's a performer or director or designer, whatever, is contributing to that. It probably makes sense for the purposes of the record to just encapsulate Mimetic Flesh for a couple of seconds here.
Yeah.
So it was the first site-specific production that the department had ever put on. It was directed by Andy Houston, who is a professor here and whose area of expertise is devised work of all kinds, including site-specific work. It took place in the Lang Tannery, which is in downtown downtown Kitchener, an old tannery building that I've got a few notes here that ran until the early 1950s, and at the time that we occupied it, it was sort of a combination of, there were some artists with studios in parts of the Lang building, Lang Tannery, and then there were other areas that were just kind of storage or leftover businesses. And we were in an area in the loading dock, and we had the elevator, and then we had three spaces up on the third floor, a kind of a storage space, another bigger space that had been not a sale producer, but it had been a place where draperies were sewn or something like that, and then kind of an area in the middle where the elevator was. And the way the show worked is the audience of 50 were greeted in the loading area by the cast, and everybody put on these Tyvek suits because, of course, the Lang Tannery was filthy, filthy. And if you recall how dirty it was.
I might have lost a year of my life there now. No, it was,
And then they were taken through these spaces and were guided through a number of stories, kind of driven by the individual performers, of which, I don't know, there were about 25 or 30.
Yeah, I would say like 30. Yeah, there was a lot
in the show who told different stories about. Some were relative to discoveries that had been made within the Lang Tannery. Some were relative to thinking about the body and body image and that kind of thing. And that's probably a good thing for us to seize on, because I think that was kind of one of the kind of preoccupations for your character in that show, right?
Yes, and it's definitely been a through line of just interest of mine since then, before then, and continued on. But yeah, the whole piece was, each part of the building was a different part of the body.
Right.
And I was in the heart, but we had the groin and we had different areas, but I was in a bathtub, but was doing like a mirror work with another one of the females in the play.
Laura Thomas.
Laura Thomas.
Yep.
And yes, and had all different images of beauty, what the perfection of beauty is, what the ugly side of beauty is, all on this mirror. And yeah, our piece was a reflection of each other, how we saw ourselves, and how it kind of changed throughout.
We have a number of photographs on the website that people can click to if they look through our past productions, and then they'll be able to see. And there are a couple of photos of you. One of the things that I remember about Mimetic Flesh was really the demand that we made of all of the performers and all of the people doing the technical work as well. It was, there was nothing easy about Mimetic Flesh, about the birth or the production of Mimetic Flesh at any point. And the space always pushed back, right?
Yes.
And it was challenging to be in downtown Kitchener.
Yes.
And Andy Houston and I were reflecting that in some ways it was a bit like a film shoot, right?
Yes.
Like it had many of those same qualities, right?
Definitely. When you said that, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think also just the extensive rehearsals we did reminded me of that, and really working with a space and what you have there, and incorporating that into the story. It's definitely huge with independent film, because you have limited amount of resources as you do in theater, and so you do have to get more creative with your space and rehearsals and the kind of technical collaboration and maneuvering of it. Like you just need more time to figure it out. So we had never rehearsed more for a play than for Mimetic Flesh. And it was also just the character development was very much how I see film, or how I approach film. And
Can
again,
you say a little more about that? In what way do you, what are those like?
well, at first, I mean, for myself, becoming a writer now, I mean, we wrote the piece together. And so for myself, when I wrote Moments of Clarity, I was writing with somebody else. And so Mimetic Flesh, there was 30 of us, and all trying to put this story together. And then also, I think just the way I approach characters and this, yeah, just the work that you have to put into really making these people come alive is something that you do in film a lot. You have to rehearse it down to a T, so you know. So technically, you know what you're doing, so then you can get lost within the character, and you have to do that. Otherwise, if you don't start from the technical blocking aspect, then and try to do it at the same time, then your character falls flat, or you're not believable, and so I think just had the groundwork we had to do in Mimetic Flesh, and the amount of groundwork, I think people are so shocked when they hear my timeline with Moments of Clarity, or how long, once they have a friend or somebody in film, realize how long it takes, how much work you do before, and how much work you do after, and how short the filming aspect of it is.
Actually
and that,
is, yeah.
again, just reminded me of training in theater.
Yeah, well, and also to push this Mimetic Flesh metaphor a little further, metaphor, allegory, whatever it is, there's pushback at every stage too. Like from what you've described of just the whole process of getting Moments of Clarity made, and just the number of hurdles, and and many hurdles would could be points of giving up. Right?
Yeah.
Like you're going, this is just too hard, I can't do it. And one of the things I think we were very proud of with Mimetic Flesh was that nobody gave up, right? And that we just didn't stop until it was done. So, and I think that's a really valuable lesson for any student, really. And it was valuable for the department as a whole, because that agency within constraints, we like to talk about here as part of our program goals, right? Is teaching people to make it within the constraints and to overcome the obstacles and persist, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of stamina, it's all part of what we're doing. I'm talking too much
And
here,
and you're just better for it at the end of the day. Mimetic Flesh, I think we were the closest cast. I think the joke of we all lost a year of our life was a kind of a fun, and I think that's the part of film too. The dark, the hard part of it is being in the trenches and then getting out of it,
and the consuming
being proud,
nature of it.
and being proud of the work at the end. It's all worth it, and it's kind of to go through that pain, and you. I feel like you get the best work from that. I mean, if you talk to any filmmaker, I think the time that they had the best time on set was their worst film.
Yeah. No, well, and it's a bit back to your acting coach and that thing about risk and pushing yourself further in order to produce something really authentic, right? The other thing about Mimetic Flesh is that it was a completely new performer-audience relationship as well.
Yes.
Right? That was being a kind of, and that was not like the traditional actors on the stage, audience in the chairs, right?
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think, put the audience in a kind of an intermediate space. So if film is absolutely intimate, right? Like in the actor-audience relationship, and then the stage is the most kind of formal somehow, then Mimetic Flesh, with the audience following the action around as they were, was kind of somewhere in the middle. And of course, there's lots of that kind of theater making going on now. There are more and more companies who are exploring micro productions that can only
Yeah.
be performed for 5 or 6 people at a time. And of course, there's all kinds of site-specific work going on. There's Sleep No More in New York.
Kara was just telling me about that.
I saw it in October. It is like
she said
fantastic.
I would absolutely love it, and what the work that we did, like I would completely see the
definitely.
parallels.
It's like mimetic flesh if we had had money and time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Kara and I also saw Fuerza Bruta in New York, and that was, I mean, it was also a site-specific theater piece, and it was magnificent. You didn't move around as much, and it worked with water, and it was above you, but anyway, I love that interactive.
So those are all kind of interesting experiences for you, right? And so it's like one kind of self-producing, and then Vanities was another kind of self-producing.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and also Vanities, but also Murad Saad.
Yeah.
We developed those characters.
Yeah.
We had to come in once we were in the play and first say, what are our sort of, how did we get in prison? What are our mental illnesses? What's the research done on our mental illnesses? What spawned that mental illness? And then develop that character from there. So that, again, before Vanities was another play that I got to do that was very...
About producing something yourself.
Yes,
Like about looking inside yourself to bring something.
And Vanities was like a whole other undertaking because it was a year-long process. It was our thesis project, and so is the most important piece any of us had ever done at Waterloo, or I definitely saw it and treated it that way. And I had never worked on a piece that long. So much like film, the longer you work on something, the better you feel it has to be. The more time you have to develop it, and the better it should be.
Well, and I think there's a couple of things going on. I think one is that the more you invest, the higher the stakes get for yourself, right? But it's also good material for the theater, and Vanities is good material, and Mimetic Flesh, I believe, was good material as well. Good material will reward. The more you delve into it, the more you find to extract, right, and to bring forward, and the better it gets, right. So just I should probably intersperse for anybody who's still watching, or that. Vanities was written by Jack Heifner in. Sorry. It was written by Jack Heifner in 1976, played off-Broadway for 4 years. It is one of the longest running off-Broadway plays still to this day, 4-year run. There's a musical version as well that he also wrote, and it's still much produced. You go on Samuel French and you can see that there are still people producing Vanities. And it's about 3 friends, and they're 3 female friends, and they're differing kind of characters and paths, going from their high school years, which is the Kennedy assassination, up to, they're about kind of, I don't know, in their mid-30s, I guess. Right? In New York.
The 3 sections were high school, then university, college, and then, probably a couple years, 5 years, or 10 years, after university.
After that. And you played Mary, who I would say is the most physically assured, shall we say, of the 3 characters. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah.
I like that. So it's a different kind of self-producing, Vanities, because it's a text and it's all there. And you did costume design. Each of you were responsible for.
Yes, I loved that. I loved doing the costume design. Well, I mean, it took place in the 70s mainly, and so the costumes were incredible. And we also did wigs for each different time period, and we also, the transitions between those time periods, we did. Andrea Ferguson did the sound and lighting, and the sound we ended up doing a whole Beatles soundtrack from that era, and so we just had just the really fun like changes, and we would do the changes on stage.
Yeah, that's. I was going to say. I think you did those transformations of the character right there.
Yes,
on stage.
we had our vanities at the back, and then we would, you know, our Beatles song would start to play, and we would do some sort of choreographed dance movement into our next piece and time period, and you know, and start to age and start to feel that weight and difference. And it was, I mean, Vanities again just was another instigator for my. I'm a proponent for female development and just female exploration in general, and a lot of female relationships, because I think, I mean, especially now in all art forms, people are saying there's not enough female voices, there's not enough females at the head of it, and because of that, the lack of female relationships and the realism in those relationships is just becoming really apparent. And so you just come from a different perspective, and Vanities was definitely, along with Mimetic Flesh, that started with that female perspective of beauty, body, image, and how we see ourselves in the world, or how other people view us. Just was another through line that happened with Vanities. And
the play is quite critical of conventional female stereotypes.
Yes.
I would say, and the way that conventional thinking about one's role can generate conflict. I guess I would say is one of the sort of ideas that's kind of floating around.
Yes, and I mean, that's why I was attracted to playing Mary the most, because especially for the 1970s, she was very, a very free-willing woman to not sort of adhere to some sort of stereotype of that time of getting married immediately out of school, or she was very independent and a working woman, and single and childless, and proud of it.
And willing to go for it.
Yeah.
Right? Like Mary is a character who sees what she wants and then goes for it. Right?
Yes, very unapologetically.
Yeah.
So
and there's some fallout from that in Vanities, and that's what the play kind of unpacks. It's not so much that element of it, though, but I think how did those experiences contribute to your evolving sense of yourself as an artist, Kristen? I guess is what and then maybe we can bring that forward to Moments of Clarity and talk about that a little bit.
I mean, I think with all pieces, mostly all of the pieces I did at Waterloo, but specifically what we're talking about, Mimetic Flesh and Vanities, I was always very interested in female sexuality and how that's normally portrayed, or how you're viewed in society, or how you're made to feel about whatever body type or look you have. And that is something that I continue to have just such interest in. And when I moved to LA, it just kind of even more so became apparent to me that was something that I needed to tell a story about.
And do you, because there's of course the conventional image of Hollywood and the flesh pots, or however you want to.
Yes.
I mean, and is that your experience of LA and the film business? Like, you know.
Yes, in certain ways. I think I moved to LA and I was very naive to the stereotypes of LA, which are stereotypes for a reason. They are real and they exist.
Because those people are there,
And sex always seems to sell, and it's also, I think, especially now, it's just everything is over sexualized. So I felt I just couldn't escape it. I felt that that was always the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
If you were a female coming in to audition for male directors, producers, and so I just started to see, I guess just my naivete to it, and how people were viewing me versus how I saw myself.
Right.
And I think that's where I found an interesting character, because
Right.
I feel, which ended up being the lead character I played in Moments of Clarity, you normally have either like that, somebody being a bombshell, they're
Right.
there to be the eye candy, and
Yeah.
there's no three-dimensional character to them. They're the hot wife who calls and says, I'm worried, get home, or it's just very minimal, and their look is what is the most important. And then they always go to the other extreme of then you're the extremely awkward, gawky, dorky sidekick friend.
Well, you're like the opposite of that. in a
Yeah,
way,
it's
right?
just such extremes,
Yeah.
and I just felt young women and the roles that I was being offered or was given. Some of them I turned down at the very beginning because I felt if I would go in to read for them, I would think, okay, this is like hypersexualized, but I always found, for some reason, I just always found some sort of humor in it, and I would try to come at it from that perspective. But I did a couple of the first jobs that I got. Then after they gave me the job, they switched it up and they said, okay, well now actually you have to be topless, or now this is, so it was very like the stereotypes and the dark side of Hollywood, like I saw very early on, and I decided maybe I would be at a higher point in my career if I had taken those, but I'm really happy that I didn't, because it also spawned my work in writing and producing.
Right.
And
but it's almost like it's this layer of sleaze or something that everybody has to somehow navigate through. Is that accurate?
Definitely. I think, I arrived to LA 24 and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I think I thought I'm not 18 and I've matured, I've gone through stuff, I'm going to be fine, but it is very much you're in, until you have notable credit, or you are, prey to a lot of people who I think do get into the industry for the wrong reason, and there is just a lot of that still, and so it's some people just keep hacking away at the audition world and then finally get that one role, and and then they basically, people, I think it's just a level of respect, then they realize they can't treat you like that, or approach you like that. And when I got to LA, I was very lucky with a lot of stuff that happened to me with
like with the acting
with
coach
getting into Ivana
yeah.
Chuba's studio right away, and I studied with her for a year and a half. And I booked a bunch of jobs, all back in Canada. But I went out for a lot of stuff in LA, and I got a very big agent that had A-list actors, and I think I saw though just how far of a jump you had to get to that next level for people to not approach you in that way, and I think the traditional way of going about it now has sort of changed.
Yeah.
I think there's more actors than ever, and there's less film and theater being made.
Yeah.
And so I think sitting around and waiting for somebody to tell you you're exactly right, and once I went on to the producing and writing side, I realized so much of the certain jobs I didn't get had absolutely nothing to do with my talent, where that's really hard when you never have that perspective and you are just an actor. and feel that you're talented and going in and giving it your all, I learned the business, basically.
Well, and there's a lot of things to be said about that. So, like, one is that, and any performer, I think, will say this, that there are so many factors that it really, being talented, it's got nothing to do with it. Like, it isn't your talent per se. There are so many other factors. You're a little too tall, you're a little too short, the voice isn't quite what somebody heard, that are kind of arbitrary, right? That work against it. So that's one thing. The other thing, though, and you've said this yourself, is the importance of having a broader range of knowledge and skills and things that you can do and things that you can bring to it. And I think it's absolutely true that nobody can sit around and just wait for it to come to them. That you have to go for it. You have to go out and get it. Right?
Yeah. Well, and that's why, I mean, Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon, they all have their own production companies now and are producing their own work. Because I think at any level, it's hard to find quality work that then is aligned perfectly with you and the right cast and the right crew. And so the only way to really make sure that that's done right is to do it yourself, which is extremely daunting. But when I started Moments of Clarity and how it all unfolded for me, it was the hardest, by far the hardest thing I've ever done. And so many times I wanted to give up, and so many times I thought it would all fall apart or I had completely messed it all up. But it was incredibly rewarding, and I've never felt more empowered. I think that's the thing. It's really, it's hard to feel empowered as an artist because you don't have the power to, you're applying for jobs all the time.
Let's talk about Moments of Clarity then. Okay, so so this is the movie that you wrote and produced, as we've already said. So just tell me a little bit about, you know, how that came about.
So Moments of Clarity actually came from a darker time when I was thinking of leaving LA. I'd been there for 2 years. I had, like I said, been in the top acting studio, acquired an amazing agent, but just certain things that were happening to me, and I guess the sleaziness of Hollywood was starting to get to me, and so I went to Vancouver to be with my agent there for a couple months, and I just started writing down these sort of funny, I started to realize my dark sensibility with everything, because I'll say the final instigator for me starting to realize I have kind of very unique characters here, which is what has always drawn me to any piece I've done as just starting as an actor, was when I had met this older gentleman that decided he wanted to sort of introduce me to people in Hollywood, and his name was Hal Stone, and he was like this big burly guy, and he said, "You got to meet my friend. He's going to come meet us for lunch." And this man comes walking in, very disheveled, almost sort of homeless looking. And I was sitting there at this one of the most famous coffee shops in LA. So it's the spot to be. And I noticed everybody was sort of looking at us weird because I'm now with these two older men that look a little interesting, and I'm sitting there, this young girl, and I realized, like, people, I don't know what people are thinking. And this guy started talking to me, and he said, "You haven't seen any of my films? You don't recognize me?" And I said, "No, I don't. What have you been in?" And he said, "Well, I'm Ron Jeremy." And I said, "Okay." And I didn't know who he was. And so I tell people that story, and they thought it was hilarious that I had no idea who he was.
Ron Jeremy was.
And so that was kind of
Ron Jeremy's a porn star.
Yes, he's porn star. And so I started to realize this, I kind of took on a caricature of myself, and
in that moment.
Yeah,
sort of,
and then I started to just, it just kind of flowed out of me, this sort of, you always see that sexually repressed, nerdy guy in this is 40 or not 40-year-old virgin. Or, you always see that, but there's never that girl. And I also realized it's always the awkward teenager that's trying to find their way in life, but there's never the mid-20s. And I thought, I'm completely in a quarter-life crisis here, and nobody has done this. And I found this niche and really tapped into it. And then I wrote the script, and then I ended up getting my writing partner because, again, I had never written anything before, and he kind of helped me, shape the format of it and everything. But all of the characters came from not only stuff that I saw or was inspired by, but just certain weird circumstances like that I found myself in, and thought this has a really interesting dark humor to it. And that is what ended up being these characters were the thing that ended up being the thing that made the film the most successful because of the actors we got involved. They said that through a series of events, we hired our director, Stev Elam. It was his first feature film. He had only done shorts, but he had an incredible eye, and his shorts showed that. And he knew Xander Berkeley, who's from Air Force One, Terminator 2. He's done 150 films. He's very much a chameleon actor, and so some people won't recognize him as much. But I knew who he was, and he said, Xander, he had done a short with him, and he said, the moment I'm doing my feature, Xander said, I will do anything to be a part of it. So Xander came on board right away and loved all these characters, and he ended up being the lover of the washed-up ex-porn star played by Eric Roberts.
Right.
And who was perfect, and that his name is Hal Spreadham in the film. And that started from Hal Stone and Ron Jeremy and that weird meeting. And
that's so great.
They loved it, and Eric was amazing. He was perfect as it, and him and Xander have the best chemistry. And and Xander had done Nikita and the Kick-Ass movies with Lindsay Fonseca.
And so that was how...
And she came in to play my best friend, this unlikely duo, which I was terrified of casting because I knew that our chemistry and how we interacted was going to be either the downfall of the film or the success of the film. And when she was the one who approached us, she's the one who actually, I didn't even want to meet with her because I said, I don't think she knows what a small budget we're doing this for, and I'm afraid this big Hollywood actress is going to come in and then, expect all of the things that you normally have on multi-million-dollar films. But she came to us and said, I haven't been inspired by a piece like this.
Fantastic.
Ever. And she said, and she was coming off of a show that is very successful, Nikita, where she has a massive fan base, but she felt she was a cog in a wheel, and she felt that she didn't have that sort of we're in the trenches and we're building these characters together. And her and I are now best friends. I was in her wedding, and so I always said that was what was so important to me, was I wanted this to be an actor's piece.
Right.
I wanted people to attract bigger actors to play these roles, but what ended up happening was beyond my wildest dreams. Everybody in the film is a known actor, except for me thus far. and I was the lead. So
it's a credit to the authenticity of the writing, I think, right? And then there is a certain amount of luck there, but it's also your I think it's your kind of humorous take on it. One thing I want to ask you about is that, so your character and Lindsay's character, it's like a church retreat that they're going to, right? So there's a thing about faith, right? And being people of faith. And so where does that come from?
I think...
because it's very topical, but it's very topical in America right now, right? Like, I mean, America is in many ways a profoundly religious country.
Yes.
And so I was just curious where that...
I think it was a combination of just feeling the sort of divide of people in LA, or the sort of segregated groups. So just even what sort of box people were trying to pigeonhole me in as to figure me out as an actor, that I was saying, well, no, like I shouldn't be exactly like this person, because don't you want something fresh and new? And so I think it was this sort of, I have nothing against organized religion, but I think just seeing how it can sort of make people feel that they have to be a certain way, or present themselves in a certain way, and then they are separated from somebody else. And I think also just being so alone in Los Angeles, I think it just started to, I just started to think of like the bigger picture of everything in life. And I didn't ever want it to be a religious piece, and by no means is it, because my character Claire, even though so she was raised by an agoraphobic mother, so she was the only one that was allowed to leave the house, and the times that she was allowed to leave the house was for church and to go grocery shopping. And I loved the joy that she found in that communal place she got to go, but then I also wanted to explore how other people used it to their own advantage, or how other people felt stifled by it. And so Lindsay's character, she's the daughter of the pastor in town, who is the only real male figure Claire, my character, has in life. So she kind of has this funny crush on him without knowing. And again, the agoraphobia came from me as well, feeling very isolated and starting to feel people weren't understanding me, or people were trying to change me, or again, make me somebody who I wasn't, and I could feel myself changing and I didn't want to. And so that made me go inside. And so, I mean, Claire and Danielle and Henrietta, my mom's character, all three of those women came from me and how I was feeling. I felt like the sheltered, naive girl, and then who was Claire, and then I felt like Lindsay's character Danielle, who was sad. She missed her mom. She missed her mother had passed away, and not that my mother has passed away, but I missed my family, and she was trying to put on this tough exterior. She was trying to be this like bad girl that she wasn't, and then the Henrietta character of my mother just wanting to isolate myself and stay inside. And so, I mean, all of the themes in the film are all kind of like interwoven and connected. But I always wanted to find this sort of lightness of it. So again, it's not a religious piece. It's not, I didn't want it to also be a mental illness piece, but that fine line of, in dark comedy, that tone was something I spent so long on in the writing, and then in the producing and acting, but then even in the whole editing process, because why I love dark comedy so much is because I think that is life. It's you'll be laughing when you should be crying, or vice versa.
You laugh because it's instead of crying, or as well as crying. And it's interesting how filtering your own experiences led you to have as background such a key kind of factor in the texture of American life right now, right? Like I just think that's really interesting how that presented itself kind of instinctively to you.
And it was really interesting because that was a huge topic in all the Q&As we did after all the festivals, wondering where it came from, but then people really really connecting to my character Claire, because I think also what I felt and what I wanted to try to connect to everybody with is this sort of needing or wanting to belong, but then wanting to stay true to yourself. And what Claire represents is that sort of inner child within all of us that I think I found when becoming an adult. I think people try to kill that inner child within you, which makes you fearless or makes you unapologetically positive or optimistic. That gets squashed and belittled as you get older. And I think that innocence and positivity that Claire has about life was something that people really grabbed onto, that needed that right now, needed that message and needed that kindness brought to them. And to play such a quirky character that seemed so off, right? Like she's different and she's very original and very much herself. And to start the film and see that, you kind of think, oh, who is this person? Yeah. And by the end, you see how every single person she interacts with, they have changed through knowing her. And yes, her as well. But it was this light that I wanted to hold on to that I felt was so important. And she's the version of me that I would want to be. I found myself being more of the Danielle character and wanting to retreat like my mother character. And so Claire was somebody that I was trying to bring out of myself. And I think people really connected to that and really connected to, you're made to think the world is so horrible. Yes, horrible things happen in the world, but does that mean that you should be fearful of everything and also be so pessimistic about every person you meet? And that's what I found in Los Angeles, being new and seeing a lot of my friends were then in their 30s in the Ivana Chubbuck studio and had been there for 8 years or whatever, and seeing their like light inside dwindling and seeing them get hardened and me come in, and they said I was like a little puppy, like running around like, isn't this amazing and this is so cool, and then being kind of trying to be like, okay, well, it's not as much as you think, it's fine. I'm like, why? I want to stay like that. And so that's the thing that touched me so much about how Moments of Clarity has affected people, and that's why I love dark comedy so much, because some festivals we went to, like when we premiered in Boston, people came up to me and were crying, and somebody came up to me and they said they had an agoraphobic mother and they felt such a connection to her in the film, but also it made them feel better about where their mother was, or understanding of their relationship more, or just the one of the lines Claire says at the end of the movie is, we're all just trying to do the best we can with what we're given. And that really just hit home to a lot of people, or to go after your dreams, which Claire does, which is her dream is to leave the house and go to this youth group jamboree.
Well, and I think you could say that we're all just trying to do the best with what we've been given, as like could apply to our efforts on Mimetic Flesh, or to Vanities, or to any kind of effort of any effort by an artist to create and to have agency within constraints, right? Within the constraints that they're presented with.
And to have the courage to go full throttle into it. I'll say that also Mimetic Flesh, one of the things that I remember was with the costume design, and Jocelyn saying to me, and I took this as a massive compliment, but she said to me, don't take this as an insult, and because I mean it as a great compliment. She said, you're not, all of the girls come in here and they're trying to think of a way to, how can I look prettier, how can I look better, and you come in here and you're so just, this is my character and this is what I'm going to look like, and you don't, she said, you're not afraid to look ugly. And I really took that to heart, because I think that's it, and that's what I wanted with Moments of Clarity most.
You're not ugly, Kristen.
Oh, thanks. But I think the thing is that actresses, there is, it's so easy to all of a sudden feel your greatest worth is what you look like, and get lost in that, and then you lose,
like we were talking about before.
Exactly,
right?
and you lose truly what is your originality. And so and people again have said that to me. Most girls, if they got the opportunity to write a feature, star in it, they would want to make themselves the most beautiful, sought after, you know, whatever woman. That's normally what people do. And I think again that was something that people were so attracted to this piece. Was I then came and met them and said, I wrote this, I am Claire, and they just thought, this is so, you're making yourself this awkward, dorky girl that's very out there. And I think people found that very fresh. And the dichotomy between Claire and Danielle, again, when Lindsay met with us, she said it's very much a relationship you'd see between boys. The film could easily be two boys. And that was actually something that I picked up on right away with my work at Waterloo. That I was so, well, in The Tempest, I played a boy part. And I was very interested and saw how if you just change the gender, how fresh of a perspective it is, and not fitting into those stereotypes. So that the characters of Claire and Danielle, it would be normally the cool boy, the cool, you know, badass boy, and then the nerdy geek. And to see girls, it was refreshing, and to see girls kind of doing bad things, or, you know, they
I can't wait to see it. I'm looking forward to it. So and what is next? So what's next for you?
So with Moments of Clarity, I started my own production company, Long Stem Pictures, and I have written my next piece. While Moments of Clarity was released this past year, I was very inspired by my next story. It's called Yesterlife, and it's a love story, actually, but I think my dark humor is that is definitely going to be there. And it again, this is now from is a relationship explored from a female and male perspective, and again, female sexuality, but then there's a sister relationship as well in this film. That was again really important for me to explore a different dichotomy of female relationships. Moments was best friends or unlikely friends, and then this is sisters who have dealt with a tragic loss and other problems in their life. And I have Lindsay Fonseca, who signed on to play the sister. We're really excited to do another film together, and so many of the cast, Moments of Clarity, they're so incredibly supportive. All of them came around to all the festivals, and I strategically wrote roles that I was inspired by, that could also fit some of the people I'm inspired by from Moments of Clarity. So Xander Berkeley would love to do the film, and Mackenzie Aston. There's an awesome part for him in there if he would like to do it. So yeah, I'm working on that. That's in pre-production. I'm meeting with investors and finding the financing. I'm submitting to a couple of writing competitions. And then I also simultaneously am doing this web series sort of social media experiment. The title is still in the works, but again, there's through lines with all of my work that I want people to notice. The different exploration of females and their relationships and their connection to their sexuality, or how they're viewed in the world. And I think with social media, with everybody having a camera and being able to, you know, film little snippets of their life all the time, it's creating such an interesting atmosphere, and the sort of idea of actors actually having a skill set that they have acquired, trained, and have great knowledge on, I feel is starting to become diminished in certain ways
because of that accessibility of a camera and
exactly, and saying, well, I could be famous. It's
Yeah.
you just want to be famous, so
Yeah.
you will do anything outrageous
Yeah.
on your
Well,
Facebook video live or your whatever.
And it's extremely perilous, right?
Yeah.
Like it is really perilous, and yeah.
And so it's quite a dark world and quite a scary, dangerous world, and so I wanted to again explore that from a darkly comedic way, because with all of my pieces, Moments of Clarity, Yesterlife, and then this now web series, social media project we're doing, I mean, all have the through line of this sort of sex symbol that females are supposed to be, or that is their main attribute, or how it's just getting worse and worse with the amount of social media and marketing that is out there of what girls feel like they have to do to have any sort of worth in this world. And so but when dealing with any of those bigger, harder subjects, it's easier for people to digest it with comedy. And that is the thing that was the biggest takeaway with Moments of Clarity, was the biggest thing I spent the most amount of time on, was that tone of, it seems like a lighthearted movie, and it is, but if you sit there after or think about it after, you see the bigger messages within it that are quite dark or problematic for our world right now. And so that's with my next two projects, that's going to be in there, and my humor with it will be in there, but also I think this sort of a little bit of the shock value of it will be in there to sort of wake people up.
Is there anybody working in, a female artist working in LA right now who you really admire, or you think that's the career I would like to have, or that's the area of work I'd like to be doing?
Yes, two people I have been extremely inspired by who inspired me to take the ownership and do my own work. One, Lena Dunham. I find her incredibly fearless, and I really like her work, and also just coming from the same sort of generation, and her exploration of sexuality, I find really interesting. But
well, and she offers an interesting kind of antidote or counter image to the conventional feminine image that we've been talking about. She takes a lot of flack too. Right?
She does. Well, and I think that's the thing that I'm always fearful of in my work, but also know it's the only work I can do that's going to make me the most fulfilled of pushing those boundaries and of that line. Just in a different way, I feel like when we had first shot Moments of Clarity and then we're in the editing process, I thought, oh God, what have I done? Like, people are going to understand this girl because she's so different. You've never seen a character like this. And some of the greatest compliments I got from really high level people in the industry were, I can't see anybody else playing this role. Like, I couldn't say, okay, no, Kristen, I love your movie, but we're going to get Jessica Alba in here to play this. And so that was a massive compliment to me. But it also comes with a lot of fear, because not everybody is then going to be attracted to that or like that, because it's new and it's different, and you are trying to change their perspective of what always has to be.
But it's a necessary risk in the interests of authenticity.
And that's where I want to live, and I think that's also, I know why people were attracted to Moments of Clarity, because it was different like that. I don't want to write a movie that you say, oh yeah, I saw that love story, yours is just slightly different. I want everything I do to, you know, yes, there's the universal stories that we tell,
Yeah.
but then I always wanted to be my own fresh perspective. And so another person I really admire a lot is Britt Marling, who is another, just like Lena Dunham, is a producer, writer, actress. And she had her first 2 films. She met her writing partners at university. These 2 men who ended up, they're writer-directors, and she wrote both pieces with them and produced them and then starred in them. And her first movie was Another Earth, that was premiered at Sundance. And she also did The Sound of My Voice the same year with these 2 different writers. And what I love about her that is more infused in my next piece, Yesterlife, is this sort of little bit of a sci-fi element to it. Another Earth is about what if there was this other Earth that we could go to, and if you had that option, would you? And how would your life change? And so with my next piece, it's exploring this relationship, this couple that just got engaged, but then it goes through their past and then their future, and you see how our perspective of our world and our memories and our expectations are all from our own lens. And how do you view it versus the person that you're there with? And can that be altered if you had a better understanding of your brain? And I think and how you can manipulate the world you live in. And so, I mean, that came from the exploration of being an actress and going into a character and having those moments that I feel so lucky I've had, where I feel like that person. And you come out of it. Moments of Clarity was because that has been my longest project. And filming it, we shot in 15 days, which is unheard of, and we shot like 13 pages a day. And so we were going, and sometimes I only had 1 take, and I remember just being I thought the whole thing was so real. And I couldn't, I was Claire the whole time, and it was incredible. And so to have those moments where you see how much you are in control of your own reality. And yeah, I also learned that when I did Vanities. That was my first eye-opening moment of that, because it was our final performance where all of you professors were coming, where we were getting our final grade, and I had the most amount of people who came to see me that night. We had a packed house every night, but I remember I got so nervous, and I had never felt that way. And I went to bed the night before, and I said, okay, you have to get a good night's sleep, Kristen. You have a massive day tomorrow. And then I had a horrible sleep because I told myself I had to get a good night's sleep. And I woke up and I said, oh no, I think my head sort of hurts. And I said, no, Kristen, you can't get a headache. You have to feel great today. The day went on. Oh, my head hurts. No, it doesn't. My head hurts. No, it doesn't. My head got worse and worse and worse. We started the play, and I remember we were backstage, and Kara and Andrea looked at me, and they're like, you okay? And I said, like, guys, I think I'm going to be sick. I think I'm sick. And they're like, you're fine, Kristen, you're fine. We went on, and it was at the intermission. I remember I ran back, and I got sick. And I remember I thought I was going to be sick on stage. And I came back, and then I was perfectly fine, and we finished the play, and everybody had no idea, and everybody loved the play, and I loved my performance in it that night. I was really proud of myself, but I saw how I made myself that way.
Yeah.
I was not at all sick. The moment it was over,
Then
I was perfectly fine. And so it was very eye-opening. I don't know if you'll want to keep that in, but.
Oh, okay. So thank you for your time today, Kristen. And I think your story is very inspiring, and the way that you have brought authenticity and your authentic self forward. We could all see that when you were here, and it's really great to see it continuing to this day. So all the best of luck to you in the
Thank
future.
you.
And thank you for this.
Thank you, Bill.